Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to our new monthly South African live stream series called African Echoes. I joined Question Pro as an account director back in February, and myself and Mawande will be taking over the South African leg of Fireside Chat, which we've now called African Echoes. So, in an inaugural episode of African Echoes, it's my pleasure to introduce our first guest, Jean Moorman, who's the founder and CEO of Latitude Connect, who's based in Pretoria. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you, Sean. Good talking with you again. Thank you for the opportunity.
Sure. So for some of you that maybe not know, myself and Jean worked together for a few years at Ask Africa. 2 years ago, he left and created Latitude Connect, and he's also a managing partner for Infinite Insights in South Africa. So before we begin, maybe just asking Jean a question to get to know me a little bit better. So Jean, if you can invite anyone to a braai, who would it be?
To a braai. Well, considering my favorite program on TV now is Chasing the Sun, I would love to have like the management team, or specifically Rassie Erasmus, for a braai. So to talk about the philosophy and how I managed to turn around and really just manage to motivate themselves and the players in difficult circumstances. I think it's a story of resilience. I think it's a story of being able to pivot, when things happen easily, and it's inspiration for us, I think. So I think me and Rassie in a few beers, Sean, you also invited, would be a lovely, lovely conversation. So yeah, I would have to say someone like Rassie, or someone on the Springbok management team. And it's the World Cup. We're still basking in the glow of that. So yeah, Rassie.
Yeah, I watched the episode 3, which came out on Sunday as well, and I think, yeah, his way of doing things is quite incredible in terms of benching Kolisi and Etzebeth and a few others before the quarterfinals. So I think there's definitely a few lessons to be learned from him, and I think what he's been doing with South African rugby has been exceptional. So no, I think I can second that. So maybe just a few details before we start today. So you'll be able to tune in each month for 30 minutes, usually around 2 o'clock South African time. We're running these sessions once a month, and we'll be discussing topics varying by guests and what's latest and current in the industry. So we're also live on my LinkedIn profile as well as Question Pros, YouTube and X feeds. And please post your comments in down below. We would be happy to chat to you, make you part of this conversation today. So you might be asking, what is African Echoes? So if you haven't heard about Fireside Chats, which we did last year, it is an informal conversation that we're having with our South African clients, partners, subject matter experts, where we share ideas, thoughts, challenges, and best practices in research as a whole. So what we'll be talking about today specifically is we're going to hear from Jean, who's a passionate researcher in Africa, as well as social development with 20 plus years on the continent. And he'll be discussing with us some of the changes that's been happening since COVID, and especially in the online space. So Jean, my first question would be is give us an overview of your journey and how it led to you becoming the founder of Latitude Connect.
Sure. Yeah, it's a long story, but I think shortly, I was doing media research after varsity, and then I was at Cinevate, which became Ipsos for 6 years. Then I joined Ask Africa for almost 12 years, where most of that time we were together there. And then shortly before COVID, it was a situation where you just started reevaluating, life and thinking to myself, after I've been doing this for 20 years, surely there are better ways to to do it. And I decided after, COVID was a bit of a spanner in the works, but after that decided I think it's a good time to go, and haven't been looking back since. It's been 2.5 years now. Very, very happy. Provided me with really what I wanted was the latitude, the ability to choose and decide and be flexible where you want to be, and really to be able to service clients easier, and a bit less bureaucracy at the end of the day. And it's been a lot of fun. I've
So
been finding good partners, including Question Pro, and built on partnerships, really.
On that, how did you actually come to the name Latitude Connect?
No one gets it, and everyone misspells latitude. But for me, it was a lot of the work that we do is with Western or Northern Hemisphere clients, right? So either from the US or Germany or Europe or the UK, etc. And for me, it was be able to connect, and obviously the latitude and longitude, latitude over northern and southern hemisphere. But there's a second meaning to latitude, which means freedom. Freedom to do, really to give someone latitude. That was part of me. It made sense, but no one gets it, Sean. I'm so glad you asked that question because but Latitude Connect for me was being able to connect across hemispheres, but also then to have freedom and scope that we provide, not just to our clients, but also to our partners and suppliers.
Okay,
Thanks.
cool. Thanks for clarifying. I mean, I didn't know, so at least now I'm one wiser. What would you say was the most significant change in online research since COVID, specifically?
Sure. I mean, that was a crazy time, no? I mean, we were working together. It was unexpected. We saw this thing in one, and I think the big thing was we weren't able to conduct really any more face-to-face research, and companies had to pivot extremely quickly. So the first thing that everyone wanted to jump on the bandwagon was really to say, what can we start doing online? And people started setting up their own panels. People started looking at alternatives, maybe telephonic interviews for the NatRep surveys would work. That started becoming a bit more prominent, but online became a viable alternative. I would argue, probably for the first time in since very long, last 15 odd years
Mm,
before that, since we've been pushing. So suddenly, customers, agencies, clients started to see it as a viable alternative, and I think it came much to the strength, much to the fore, really, when it came to qualitative work. So, as I was talking earlier, I mean, in 2019, 18, if you told someone I want to conduct a focus group on Zoom, why would you want to do that? Doesn't make sense. But nowadays, even post-COVID, we still using that as a very valid methodology or data collection method, because we saw that actually it can work. There are certain benefits, and it opened people's, I think, toolboxes to some extent, and created online access panels or via online really as a viable alternative that wasn't there before. And again, I think necessity is the mother of invention. So someone told me, don't waste a good crisis, and I think that is what the industry managed to do during COVID. You think? You agree?
I think it's Yeah, no, I think it's incredible what some companies achieved during lockdown as well. I mean, face to face was completely thrown out of the window for I think what 6 to 8 months possibly. Catty was also a little bit of an issue where although people were working from home, they were not necessarily answering the phone. So at the end of the day, online was essentially our only option at that time. And I think, yeah, I think it's incredible how clients have been adopting online over the years and really building on that. And I really can't see how our clients can start going back to traditional methods if online is essentially so powerful at the moment.
Yeah, and
Um,
consumers' minds also changed now. Consumers' perspectives also changed. You could see over the years, obviously, our online access has improved. It's never really been
mm,
bad, and I think, but it's managed now to get to a point where it's not just the access, but the almost participation and reaching critical mass. Probably about 5 years ago, but as a legitimate mainstream option, it's emerged for clients. Yeah, no, it's been fascinating. And the panel companies probably, and I know they saw significant increases. I mean,
mm,
not so much for lower based countries, some of the African countries like the Kenyas and Nigerias of the world in particular. So big growth in volumes. Yeah, albeit from a very low base, but it
mm.
really helped establish that in Africa, not just in South Africa.
So why do you think this surge in online has remained since COVID? I mean, COVID has been essentially a non-issue for the past 2 years, I think.
Mm.
Why do you think it's been building on strength by strength?
Yeah, there's the stickiness factor, but I think it's to some extent is that the online providers, it's become easier. It's become a lot easier than it was. So you got, I mean, we've been working with Question Pro now, and it really creates a much easier, almost DIY avenue to do it. So it's not, the barriers have to a large extent has been disappeared. The barriers to entry for online. Almost everyone can do it. I mean, I remember what's 15, 16 odd years ago at Cinevac when we tried to implement MROCs, market research online communities, and no one knew about it. I mean, it was a global initiative,
Mm.
and you can't believe how difficult it was just to convince people that this can work. This can work, and it could be cost effective. But online has now emerged as a much more cost effective alternative as well. I think if you look at 2024, where we are now, the increases in travel costs, increases in subsistence, labor, that's become problematic for a lot of clients. Economy is not necessarily performing the way it should, and as a more cost-effective alternative, I think that's why the surge continues. And prior experience has taught clients it can be reliable, it can be valid research, and yeah, they've stuck with it.
What else do you think? Because I mean, we've had a discussion a few weeks ago where we mentioned the cost of online, and it has really been stabilizing over the past, what, 10 years, like we discussed.
Yeah.
What would you say would be other factors that's also driving it to other than the DIY aspect as well?
The cost is a big driver. I would say that for the last 5 years, a lot of panel costs has stayed the same in dollar terms. So creating alternative or options and the innovative solutions that's also emerged that where you can look at things like the AI coming to the fore in terms of design, how companies have helped clients to streamline their research from start to finish using things like dashboards, using things like automated processes, and that also creates a bit of a sense of something that can stand alone, as opposed to something that's just been a tag on or an add on in terms of different components. And the consumers are also more open. I see when you look at some of the panel compositions and you look at how it's been set up, it's it's reached now to an extent where you can cover such a big portion of the population, rural population, the lower income populations, and that's something the clients also need to be educated on to some extent, because it's been, yeah, but our customers are LSM, 4, 5, and they cannot be reached online. But the penetration has become such that majority of consumers are reachable online.
Mm.
Typically not the top end, the top end. That's where people often make the mistake. But we got such good coverage nowadays that you don't even need to look at mixed methods. You can really find your target from the bottom to the top, typical consumers online, and that's created a sense of security, I think, as well, which
Mm.
means that stickiness factor remains.
I also think the channels that these people interacted with has also really increased the response rates. I mean, if you can conduct a survey via WhatsApp rather than only relying on an email survey being sent or an SMS and stuff, and I think those additional options have really made it more convenient for the consumer as well, for the respondent participating in these. And I think also, for me, the UX has really improved in the past 5 years, maybe more significantly, in terms of the experience, not just for the person using these platforms, but also for the people taking part in these surveys. I
Respond.
think I think about 5 years ago, what you were looking at were very, very basic, and I think also it's something that respondents may have been adverse to in the past. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, it made it so much easier. I mean, the preferred method of communication. I mean, you've done a lot of work as well in telephonic, and you can see how the response rates for certain demographics has just decreased, decreased, decreased. I mean, you get older people; they're more than willing to conduct the interview, but younger folk are not as amenable to traditional methods. And I think
Mm.
that's a very, very valid point, because suddenly you're interacting with the respondents, consumers, really citizens, in the way that they used to efficiently communicate. So that is naturally, obviously, something that appeals to, I think, not just response rate, but sometimes in terms of validity, in terms of what you're getting as
Mm.
well. Trying to force maybe methodologies on certain types of respondents is tricky and probably not the best idea. But that is something that we don't really consider, is that how consumers' consumption habits change, and we didn't really take note of that. And now we're able to conduct a survey with beautiful graphics and rankings and things that you can move around on your phone. It creates a familiarity, and it creates a familiarity. And when people do come and say, yeah, but what about the validity of the research? What about, is this going to be valid? We always look at that. We always say things like, design the questionnaire in the right way and engage with consumers in a legitimate manner, then the answers will be better. And even openings, and I mean that used to be the Achilles heel of online to a large extent. Just did a study now for consumable company, and the open ends that we received in an online survey using Question Pro was amazing. I mean, we could do so much with that. Whereas, telephonic, I have to listen and record and then go back and code, and even for online.
Mm.
So that, I think, from a self-completion perspective, self-administered perspective,
Mm.
has actually improved as well. So it's not just the technology, it's not just those rational factors, but it's really the environment and the society changing that's making it more and more appropriate as a method. I think that's a very valid point. Maybe someone should write a thesis on that, but it is. I think it's part of the appeal nowadays, and we can see it in the
Mm.
data. It's not just in terms of the experience of research, because we can actually see it in the data. I think if I think back over
Mm.
the last 10 odd years and how that's improved.
I want to take you back to something you said earlier, where you briefly touched about in terms of global reach, that you can really do online in any type of country, in Africa specifically, and how the penetration has been much better very recently. How 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 big of a factor do you think that is for you and other clients, where online is able to have a global reach and really make it interesting, where you don't really need to rely on call center agents speaking the language in the country, or face-to-face people really venturing into these very, very rural areas?
Yeah, I mean, it's so often that we work with client, and client says, I've got limited budget, but I want to do 5 countries. Now, to do, let's say South Africa and Kenya and Malawi, whatever the case may be, but you've got five disparate kind of markets. It's created a sense now where you could easily launch multiple markets simultaneously, whereas before, you had to contract in each and go there and do it, and it just became so much more expensive. But for these kind of, what I can argue, is multi-country studies,
Mm.
it's really become a much, much, much more efficient way of doing this. And the setup costs, I think research is expensive at the end of the day. So we're always looking at ways of being able to still answer the research questions in a reliable and a valid manner. But not everyone's got, like, hundreds and hundreds
Mm.
of thousands of dollars to conduct a research study, especially for multiple countries. So Africa is still a bit of a, I mean, it's some of the markets are better than others, but a lot of people have got burned in Africa using that. So
Mm.
we I see more reliable data coming from the bigger markets as well. Some of the smaller ones are still not necessarily large enough or integrated enough to totally rely on it, but it's become leaps and bounds. I mean, leaps and bounds, especially for the big markets, your Nigerias and Kenyas and Egypt, etc., etc., and much easier to
It's such
manage.
a
I mean,
skill. Yeah, I think the management part, I think, has really been a lot easier. I think in the past it was very rudimentary, very basic the way it was applied. But just switching to the future. So, how do you foresee the future of online research evolving, continuing on this path that it's going on?
yeah. So I think it was easier to stay. Yeah, you'll find more ability for clients to be able to do. Now, probably I shouldn't say this as a supplier, but to be able to do DIY research. I think it's something
Mm.
that we've created the right tools to enable more lean, more able kind of research teams that are able to conduct. You don't need a big team. I mean, and some of the tools, I mean, you do have your very complicated expert tools that you need to work with, and then you've got something that's really user friendly. Not being paid for this, I'm not plugging this, but being able to work with something like Question Pro, I mean, even I could program, and to be able to do that means it's it's more accessible to clients, and it would be able to integrate it a lot more in their brand plans and their product plans. So, for example, um, to plan at the beginning of the year and to include that as an option for them. But things like artificial intelligence would definitely be integrated. We can already see some of those offerings. And while some people would argue that there's a little bit of threat from AI for respondents and for security and legitimacy, we see big, nice innovations when it comes to qualitative work. We see in terms of analysis of transcripts, transcribing. We see our projects now can be, running 40-50% of the time by using things like automated dashboards, but not just automated dashboards, but dashboards that are created with artificial intelligence. So that I think is going to be a big game changer over the next year or two. And I think how tools are changing, how we changing the ways that what we can do is going to improve. When you start looking at things like image recognition, when you start looking at things like audio recognition, it's going to create a lot new opportunities that's not just based on text as we used to. I think for research as well. But those are nebulous terms, and I think some of them might and might not work out. But it's going to start becoming less and less rigid and more fluid, I believe, as time continues. But we now have the ability to work through unstructured data in a different way, and I think there are new opportunities of creating alternative kind of data points that didn't necessarily exist before. So it's a very exciting space. I think for someone like us to be able to work in it, and it's never been needed. It's not necessarily who's first, but it is who's best. So it is about looking for those opportunities and grabbing them.
I think the rapid growth of AI, I mean, we're experiencing it in our platform as well. We've got various tools that's aiding, but I think the key important thing is that AI is really just there to support you, to make it easier and quicker and more cost effective for you to do research or to get insights. And I think a lot of clients are probably thinking AI, but not necessarily in a way where it could really aid them in research. Um, so I think there's a long way still to go in terms of making AI safe and secure in all the different environments, and also those niche markets where it can be contextualized to all the different countries. It's something where AI still needs to improve a bit. But I think the pathway on is very exciting. I think it's really been proving very helpful and valuable. Um, so I mean, I for one is a promoter of AI.
Yeah, you've always been and we talked about, we see research always as a process, right? So research is a process with very discrete components as it continues. So, and that's typically where the artificial systems created more streamlined and less labor intensive. So I talked earlier about the barriers of entry. That's it's becoming less and less and less and less and less, especially in knowledge work and how we're able to engage. So imagine having an online conversation, don't need a moderator. I'm not anything against moderators, they're lovely people, but there's going to become situations where we need to be able to leverage off those large language models that we're not doing at all. I mean, some people are just using it to analyze open ends and things like that, but the opportunities are endless. So getting beyond the thinking of human centered specifically, but becoming more respondent centered. I think that's going to be a game changer. It's exciting, but it's also a little bit scary for old people like me. So yeah.
Okay, not at all. Maybe my last question, John, because we're running a little bit short of time. So, what advice would you give to businesses looking to leverage online research effectively in their decision-making processes?
Do your homework. That's number one. Do your homework. Do not use that initial bias or assumption. Say, you know what, my consumers are not online. Do your homework. Find reliable partners, suppliers, panels, multiple. Do not put all your eggs in one basket, and be able to think outside the box. We all guilty of that, but even today, even in 2024, we see it where people literally take a face-to-face survey and they plug it into online platform and they go, here's my survey. And don't forget where we can
Mm,
use things like the stimulus materials, all those nice fancy things that you guys offer, that can really make that engagement and using the tool for the tool's sake, for the platform's sake. So the medium becomes the basis of what you want to achieve rather than using those strengths. And we sometimes forget we stuck in our old ways of thinking. So I think do your homework first, understand exactly what you can and cannot do. The cannot has become a lot less, but do your homework first, understand where it is and don't make assumptions, and then just really adapt to the platform. There are it's a certain art that's involved in that. It's not just about doing things in a certain way, so be able to leverage off expertise where you need it, and to
mm.
be able to use technology to your advantage.
Yeah, I think for me, it's there's still a lot of pitfalls in online. Like you said, if you target the wrong audience, or if your approach is a little bit flawed, or the way you're asking questions is not in the right way, everything will be hindered in terms of what you're getting out of it. And I think that's where online platforms are amazing, but they don't really enable you to just go without any experience. And I think that's where companies like Latitude will also come in, to guide these types of clients just in terms of doing it the right way, but doing it online as well.
And
So yeah.
mitigating the risks. I mean, one of the things we talked, so just quick sticks, is that when something goes wrong in a face-to-face survey, it moves slower, but you can have an online survey, do your soft launch, literally 2 days later,
Mm,
you've 1,000 responses. So you need to, those upfront work is so important. It's not traditional research. It moves much quicker.
mm.
So it's always prep at the end of the day. But yeah, we know that from hard practice. So
Yeah, hard lessons.
hard lessons.
Jean, thank you very much for your time today. I mean, I think we've run out of time. But yeah, just one question, Pro. Thank you very much for being an inaugural guest on African Echoes. We really appreciate your insight and your ability to be a content expert on online research. So yeah, thank you, and yeah, we appreciate it.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Thank you for question, bro. Great partners, great company to work with. And I'll let you know about me and you and Rusty's Bri. Okay. Thanks.
Cool. So maybe just before I go, I just want to introduce my next show. So my next guest will be Kendall Reinders from Cueta, and she'll be joining me on the 16th of May at 2 p.m., where she will be continuing a conversation on CX, which she started at X State back in Feb. So with that, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.